Chains, Globes, Rounds, Part 1. What are chains? A Theosophy 101 video by Dr. Lisa Love. Have you ever gone onto the internet to learn about this topic and found charts like these and wondered what they all mean? For example, we have this one. Okay, seriously, I think I can figure this out. But then you see this chart. Well, maybe or maybe not. Of course, there's always this chart. This is getting a little too complicated, don't you think? Well, if you thought that was complicated, how about this chart? Wait a minute, while I tune into my intuition to help me. We can always add in this chart. You are hurting my brain. Stop this. And finally, this chart. This stuff is just nuts. I give up. Well, don't despair. This video will help you figure it all out. But to begin with, we need to understand that our modern scientific worldview looks at the universe and world around us as if we are outside of it. We experience ourselves as detached observers, removed and apart from the universe around us, and this is the Esoteric point of view. But this is not true. We live, move, and have our being inside of our universe, and this is the Esoteric point of view. Another way to understand this outside and inside difference is demonstrated through the classic Russian dolls that repeat from smaller to larger. Even though the dolls may seem separate from one another in an exoteric point of view, they actually fit inside one another and are not separate when looked at from an esoteric point of view. Here we see how they stack up inside of one another. Now, inside our universe, as we're coming to understand, there are many solar systems, and our solar system, planets around a star, is just one of them. Now, most of us are used to looking at our solar system with this kind of image, and we again view it in an exoteric way. We see ourselves as living here on the Earth, separate from the other planets, separate from the sun, and separate from the overall solar logos. But again, we don't live outside our solar system. We live inside of it, inside a being known as, what I just said, was a solar logos. To the right is an artist idea of our planets stacked up together in our solar system, though the sun really shouldn't be out here. It should be down here, because this is Mercury and Venus and our Earth and the Moon and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and Neptune and Pluto would be out here somewhere. And why I'm showing you this picture is because I want you to compare it to this picture. To the left, this is an actual compilation of a series of pictures that were taken of our solar system as the satellite went outside of it and took pictures looking back at it. And what's interesting to me is how this picture looks a lot like this artist drawing of a human fetus at around 1 month. Isn't it strange how they look similar? What else is interesting to me is how if we view the sun, and I'm not sure whether the sun in this picture is actually in here and these are its rays, or whether it would be out here. I'm not quite sure how to interpret this. But regardless, isn't it interesting how the sun is in a way feeding the growth of this fetus-like solar logos, similar to how the amniotic fluid feeds this little croissant within the human fetus as it begins to grow. Actually, the idea of our solar logos looking like a deflated croissant or a human fetus used to freak me out a little bit, but now I'm getting used to it. So we're very fortunate in that we live in a time where we've actually had satellites take photos of these planets like Mercury, Venus, our Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And actually, Pluto is no longer said to be a planet. It's now considered to be part of the Kuiper belt of asteroids on the outer boundary of our solar system. And then in esoteric lore, they also add in the planet Vulcan, which was said to be somewhere between Mercury and the Sun. And scientists used to make fun of that idea, except as of 2015, there have been over 200 observed asteroids found within the orbit of Mercury and the Sun. Are one of these asteroids Vulcan? Or are all the asteroids the broken up remnants of the mysterious planet Vulcan? We can't be sure. Then in esoteric lore, they also tend to add in the moon, the Earth's moon, which is said to veil a planet. Is the moon meant to represent the remnants of Theia, a sister planet of the Earth that some theorize existed, that collided with the Earth as it was forming, and the moon is her dead remains? Now, in esoteric lore, they assert that our solar logos, a living being that thinks and creates, has a scheme for each planet. The word scheme in English means a proposal or intention. So a scheme is the overall proposal or intention the solar logos has for each planet within it. And that is why we talk about an Earth scheme. Hey, a sun does not think about how to create a planet. Grow up. I thought scientists were supposed to keep an open mind. Okay, moving on. In esoteric lore, the planets in our solar system are each said to represent chakras, with 7 of our planets stated to represent the 7 major chakras of our solar logos. And I forgot to mention, these red lines were just simply the way they were trying to compile the pictures of the various satellite images. These red lines are not actually part of the photo. It's part of the computer trying to put the photos together. And shown here are what some esoteric traditions claim the 7 sacred or major planets are, though none of these are necessarily connected to the chakras shown near them. So don't draw connections like this. We don't know for sure which of these are connected to which chakras. I just simply put them in order. So the 7 sacred planets in some esoteric traditions are thought to be Vulcan, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Chakras then are really vortexes that draw to them different levels of consciousness. Now, there are many models in esoteric and theosophical literature that describe what these 7 levels of consciousness are. Here is the classic theosophical model we will mainly focus on in this video. This is one of the first models that was used, and this one has 7 levels of consciousness: Atmic, Buddhic, Monastic, Kama-monastic, Pranic, Kamic, Astral, and Objective. We'll explain them a little bit more later in this video. And here is a way to somewhat animate or give you a better idea how planets as chakras draw in the different levels of consciousness. Though again, don't get hung up on the planets here being connected to these chakras. There is still a lot of debate about which planet is which chakra, and none of these planets may be in the right chakra position here. Just simply get the idea in this kind of psychedelic animation now, how they are energy vortex systems that draw in the different levels of consciousness to them as planets, as chakras within a living being called a solar logos. So, in a sense, we live inside a chakra of our solar logos, though our Earth is not a major chakra, and as a non-sacred planet, it is considered to be only a minor chakra. That chakra, our Earth, is also known as a planetary logos. Our universe, our solar logos, and our planetary logos, then, are all living entities that we live inside of. And in the esoteric tradition, these entities, the universe, solar logos, planetary logos, they are conscious. They think, and yes, they do create, but not in ways we understand, and all are working to evolve or expand their consciousness the same way that we humans are. Like all life forms, though, our Earth scheme or planetary logos has various stages of coming into manifestation, like when an infant is incubating in a womb, and then the Earth gets born, lives its life, and then it dies at some point. How our Earth scheme or planetary logos goes through this process of incubating in a womb as it's getting ready to come into manifestation, being born, living its life, and going out of manifestation is illustrated through a complex process described with the words in the Theosophical tradition known as chains, globes, and rounds. Briefly, chains are the 7 major stages of this process. So here we have one chain with globes, 7 substages of this process. Now, there are actually 7 chains, 7 major stages, so we would have to repeat this chart 6 more times to have 7 of them to get it accurate here. And there are 7 globes within each chain, and since there are 7 chains with 7 globes, 7 times 7, there are 49 globes or 49 substages to this process. And rounds indicate how one stage flows into the next, and I put these blue lines here, they're not in the original chart, to kind of give you an understanding of how each globe goes around to the next globe. In theosophical literature, the notion of chains, globes, and rounds first emerged with a book written in 1883 by a man named A.P. Sinnett, and his book was titled Esoteric Buddhism. Following this, a woman named H.P. Blavatsky wrote a book in 1888 titled The Secret Doctrine that she states was meant to expand upon and clarify upon the writings of A.P. Sinnett. Following these source texts by the 2 main authors, information about chains, globes, and rounds came out in a series of other books written between 1904 to 1933, starting with The Pedigree of Man by Annie Besant, Treatise on Cosmic Fire by Alice Bailey, Man, Whence, How, and Whither by Annie Besant and Charles Ledbetter, The Solar System by Arthur Powell, and The Ocean of Theosophy by William Judge. Over time, the notion of what chains, globes, and rounds meant became jumbled and confusion occurred. But having reviewed all 7 of these books, the 5 books here and the 2 source books, before creating this video, an attempt will be made to bring clarity to all of this confusion. But that means going back to the source material of Sinnett and Blavatsky, starting with the main chart found in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 153. Now notice how there are 7 circles. These are actually globes, 7 globes within one chain, and I discovered that these were globes when I found The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 171. I had to read almost 20 pages ahead to realize what this chart was trying to represent. So why is this considered to be a picture of a chain with 7 globes? Because essentially it looks like a chain or a necklace. Again, we are taught in esoteric circles that there are actually 7 chains. You see all 7 of them here now. I mentioned before that there were 7. Now we see them, each with 7 globes within the overall Earth scheme. And there are 7 times 7 globes, meaning there are 49 globes, which I mentioned before. And once more, these chains symbolize the 7 major stages of the life cycle of a planet, its scheme. 3 of the chains describe the process of bringing our Earth scheme into manifestation. It is in the womb and is not yet born. These 3 chains here. Oh, I get it. It's kind of like when you're reading about the stages of what a child is going through while it's in your womb, only we're talking about a planet. Well, sort of. One chain describes the life of our planet, Earth's scheme, from the time it is born and becomes visible up until its death, chain 4. And because we live inside a visible planet, we are in chain 4 at this time. Then 3 chains describe the process of how our planet or scheme moves out of physical dense manifestation after it is gone from the visible physical realm. And that is the process of chains 5, 6, and 7. And here we see our Earth at some point dying, decaying, and disappearing. Now, something important to note. Just as planets are the chakras of our solar system or solar logos, drawing in different levels of consciousness, chains are the chakras of our planet, connected to different levels of consciousness as well. Now we're going to take a deeper dive into understanding what goes on in these 7 chains. Beginning with chain 1, the initial descent into matter. Remember, chains 1, 2, and 3 are all dealing with our Earth scheme incubating in the womb, so to speak. To help this entire process make more sense, I'm going to overly simplify things. So in chain 1 with its 7 globes, the process of creating the Earth scheme is just beginning with the initial idea of what the planet might look like. I know, I've got a great idea. Let's create a planet. And any original idea is also known as an archetype. So in chain 1, we begin by first attracting what is known as the monads or the pitris or the sparks of life into our planet by drawing them down into what's known as the atmic level of consciousness or into the head center or Shambhala. So this is where Shambhala is being created inside of our Earth scheme or planetary logos in chain 1. We're on the descending process, so we're also creating actually 2 chakras within chain 1. The next chakra is where the sparks of life, the monads or pitris, become the seeds of the soul or the permanent atoms that are drawn down into the Buddhic plane. And here those with Buddhic or Buddha or Christ or Krishna or Kristna, the word Christ came from the word Krishna or Krishna, where those with Buddhic, Christ, or Krishna consciousness help make up what is known as the spiritual hierarchy. So we're establishing Shambhala and the spiritual hierarchy within chain 1. Now this is represented in another model than the source model, which we're using those words here, in something presented by Alice Bailey in her book Treatise on Cosmic Fire, that has the monadic plane up here and draws those monads down into what she calls the spiritual triad, or in Christianity, this is known as the Trinity. And here we have the atmic plane with the atmic permanent atom, the Buddhic plane with the Buddhic permanent atom, and the beginning of the monastic plane with the monastic permanent atom. So here we have the process that is going on within chain 1. The spiritual triad in this model is being anchored within the earth. The Atmic and Buddhic planes in this model are being anchored within the earth, with Shambhala and the spiritual hierarchy, those with Buddhic, Christ, Krishna consciousness, being anchored within our earth as well. So now we're moving on to chain 2, where we continue to descend into matter, which means we're still within the womb. Having an idea is not enough. That idea needs a plan. All of us know this. If you're going to build a house, it's not enough just to say, I'm going to build a house. You have to start to create a plan or a blueprint for it. What kind of house? Is it going to be an A-frame or a 7-story apartment building? To aid that process of creating the plan, we need mind. We need the monastic plane. So the seeds of mind are being planted at this stage for later unfolding. And the word monastic or manas means mind, and kama means desire. So here the plan of what will unfold in later chains is being planted within the mental realms of consciousness. And we have to have the desire mind to create the plan for that to happen. Now, here is another model that uses slightly different terms. This model, which comes from Arthur Powell, is using terms like higher manas and lower manas to emphasize how the seeds of mind are being planted. Now, other models picture these seeds of mind as like the soul descending from chain 1 into the mental levels of chain 2. So here's the Alice Bailey model again. We already saw it where we had, here's the tip of that spiritual triad, which is in the Atmic, Buddhic planes and just barely touching the top of the mental or monastic plane. Here you see the whole monastic plane in her model now. And here we see how the spiritual triad, those permanent atoms, are now dropping down to become the seeds of mind, creating what is known as the soul body or causal body, the body of causes within her model. Now what's interesting is in the source model from Blavatsky, she has a similar thing to what Bailey has, only she calls it the animal soul is being planted, which is creating the upadi of mind. So in Blavatsky's model, the soul is the animal soul, which means humans eventually, which will be born within the earth scheme, will have more animal than spiritual consciousness. Spiritual consciousness resides in chain 1, where those that have Buddhi, Christ, Krishna consciousness are to be found. Here in chain 2, the monastic plane is limiting that consciousness, which is what she means by upadi of mind. Upadi means being limited at this time. And here are the chakras that I believe are associated at this level. The throat chakra, which I believe is connected to the monastic permanent atom, and the heart chakra, which I believe is connected to the causal body or the building of the animal soul, if we jump to this model. Now, let's, as Theosophists, be aware that the mind can separate and divide and argue, and all of that can start to happen here as we move into the mental plane. This model is correct. No, this model is correct. No, this model is correct. So I encourage us all to not get too limited by the upadi of our minds, the limitations of our minds, and to remain inclusive and just simply examine how different models are different, and we may agree or disagree with their points of view instead of arguing or berating them. Why? Because whenever any of us are in the mental levels and its separative qualities, we're going to be more inclined to have that upadi, the limitations of mind, which tend to berate, divide, and argue about things. And finally, we're into chain 3, the last of the first 3 chains having to do with when the earth is in the womb, so to speak, and hasn't yet been born. Once the plan is developed, the energy or prana needs to be combined with desire, the kama, to condense the idea further so it can manifest pranic, kamic, and also the astral plane in the source chart. This causes things to shift, as we just saw, onto the astral plane, which is sometimes also called the emotional plane. Here is the model from Alice Bailey, pictured with just the colors here. We were talking about the monadic, atmic, buddhic, mental, and this is emotional plane here. Now, why the emotional plane? Well, in part, that's why I put this icon here, because it represents emotion or motion or movement. And just like in the 7th, 8th, and 9th months of pregnancy, you're ready for this baby to move and get out of here and be born, so to speak. So we're getting a lot more excited, a lot more ready for this planet to be born. Now, we're also told that the life force is further being limited, or the upati of life, since what the possibilities of what that life will become are being limited even more. And that refers to this particular statement coming from the source model, where we see that we're now in the astral plane or the astral body. And the upati again means limitations. As we just said, the life and what it will become is being limited even more. Think of it. You've got everything ready to build that A-frame house. You've been purchasing the materials according to your plan. You've hired the people. It's going to be really difficult to suddenly decide that you want to change course, change the plan now. Everything's already in motion here. And so the cost of aborting the plan or changing your mind and trying to do something different is getting pretty high at this level in chain 3. And again, here are the 2 chakras that I feel are involved with this chain. Why? Because we need the energy, prana, and desire, kama, that is often found within the solar plexus chakra, the will, the power, the energy, desire, to drop it down into the womb. The sacral center is within the region of a womb in a female body, where the womb is swelling, so to speak, in the 7th, 8th, and 9th months, as the desire is continuing to increase to get this baby born or get this planet born, so to speak. We might also say that here we are creating the etheric counterpart as well of what will happen in the physical realm. Over here in the 4th scheme, when the planet is born, we're going to find out that we're creating the etheric body for that as well here within chain 3. Finally, we've made it. We're into chain 4, where we are now. The earth is visible. It's living its life. It's been born. In our earth, the objective is being reached that was planted within chain 1 in the archetypal realm. And that objective will unfold through 7 different kingdoms that are meant to appear on our earth before it goes out of incarnation. And we will look at that process of these 7 kingdoms coming into incarnation within our planetary logos in chain 4 in another video. And I've connected the base of the spine chakra here with chain 4, where things are moving out through the womb of the mother into physical dense manifestation and living its life. Now we're going to move into chain 5, going out of manifestation. Why? Because after something is manifested, been enjoyed, or lived out its life, it can become outdated. It can start to decay, meaning it's time to let go and ascend back to spirit. But to do that, our planetary logos needs to generate the energy or prana and desire or kama to let go of the physical dense forms within it and head back to spirit. There, the life within the forms will no longer be limited. Now, I haven't shown this whole chart, even though we've been looking at pieces of it. We had the animal soul, the upati of mind, the astral body, the upati of life. We went into physical dense, but now we're going on these chains out of physical dense. These are the globes. This is like the chains going out of physical dense. And as we release out, we start to have life more abundantly. Why? We're no longer upadi or limited. We're starting to free ourselves to go back up to mind and then spirit. Now, as the many physical forms that existed on the planetary logos become ghost or astral shells, it will seem like the planet is losing its life. But again, it's really gaining its life or memory of what it really was as spirit. When we're in chain 4, we've had all these levels of upadi of spirit, mind, life, and the physical body, pressed down upon us so that we've forgotten who we really are as spiritual, unlimited, limitless, infinite beings. But now we're starting to reclaim that memory. And here are the chakras associated with chain 5 again, only they're going in the opposite direction now. They're going back up to spirit. So the sacral center is now starting to withdraw away from the realm of the 5 senses. It's kind of going back into the womb, so to speak. And the solar plexus is generating the will-filled desire to let go of the form that existed in chain 4. Then we go back into chain 6, going out of manifestation. As the planet continues to ascend back to spirit, it goes back into the plane of mind. There we might say a mental review or summing up is taking place of what was learned. Metaphorically, we might say the planet, as it's gone out of manifestation, as in chain 6, remember it's no longer in physical dense, and this is hard for us to understand, that we could be somewhere else as a conscious being, mentally reviewing the life that we had and summing up what was learned. And metaphorically, we might say that the planet is doing the same thing. The planet is asking if its original scheme or objective or intention was fulfilled. It had the idea up here. Did it reach that idea, that objective, when it was in chain 4 or not? It is looking at that in chain 6, the monastic levels, to see, mentally reviewing, did I meet that original archetype's intention? Was it fulfilled or not? What worked or didn't work in comparison to the original plan? Mistakes might be examined along with the consequences of making those mistakes. Now, this could also be looked at what is happening within the causal body or the soul of this model, So we are now on not the descending process where the soul is trying to create in the lower levels. We're back in the ascending process where the soul is trying to move us out of the emotional levels and the levels of the lower mind. It's trying to move us out of that as it reaches back up into spirit. And as it's doing that, it's looking at the causes. What caused this? What caused that to happen? The mistakes, etc., are all being reviewed within the causal body or the soul of the mental plane in this model. And that review might include an understanding of what lessons will be carried forward into the future. And here are the chakras that are involved in that process. Again, we're going up. So here we see that within the heart chakra, that causal body, that soul body, is being dissolved. And we are going back to the monastic permanent atom here. Finally, we're into chain 7. We've returned to spirit. We are back to the realm of the archetypes where the original ideas came from. Why do I say that? Because if you've been noticing, there's a repetition of the levels of consciousness going on. So in chain 1, we had Atmic Buddhic, and we have that also in chain 7. In chains 2 and 6, we were dealing with the levels of mind, and in chains 3 and 5, we were dealing somewhat with the levels of the Kama Manasic or the emotional astral body. But here, back in chain 7, we are on the Buddhic plane again, where all the experiences we had while going through the previous chains are dissolved into love, understanding, and compassion, and wisdom. also the essence of Atma, of everything that took place within the cycle of the 7 chains, is distilled as once more we're back in that realm of spirit. And so the chakras connected here, I believe, are the same as in chain 1. We have the Ajna center with that Buddha, Christ, Krishna consciousness, and the head center where we've arrived back at Shambhala. And when that whole process is completed, we go into something known as Pralaya. The cycle is finished. We've done it. We've manifested a planet. We've lived in the planet. We've dissolved the planet. It's gone. And before we activate a new cycle by creating a new scheme or planet in another solar system somewhere with 7 new chains or its various stages, there is a stage of rest, withdrawal, deep inner stillness, emptiness, or voidness. And this stage is known as Pralaya. And when this stage is finished, the new cycle of creation begins. Phew, you made it. Have you enjoyed this video? I know it's really complicated, but hopefully I've made it a lot less complicated for you. It took me reading 7 books and many months to absorb what that material was saying and to create this video to hopefully make it simpler for you. Take time, rewatch this video until you really understand it. And if you like what I'm doing, I really invite you to support my work. How you can support my work is you can purchase one of my books or set up a one-on-one spiritual guidance session with me. These books that you see right here are a series of 10 books that will come. These primarily describe the stages of spiritual growth as we go through the human kingdom, the kingdom of conscious souls, and arrive into the kingdom of planetary souls. This particular chart that you see right here is the extensive work I've been doing to try and bridge Theosophical ideas and the ideas of Alice Bailey's map in with the integral map. Those of you that know the integral community that was started by Ken Wilber know that it's become extremely popular, and I've been following them and read most of Ken Wilber's books since the 1980s, but the integral map is missing some essential components that were originated a good 100 years or more before the integral community started through Theosophy. And that's why I think it's critical to build these bridges so we can help that community understand. We love what they're doing. We love a lot of their ideas. They've even added some great things in terms of understanding that can help the Theosophical community, but we want to build the bridge so they understand some things that they might want to consider in their model as well. That's been my passion since the 1980s. You can support that process by visiting the website that I've had going since 2016, comparing the integral model to the Theosophical system. You can help me and maybe others, if I can employ them, write more books and improve upon these videos. And when you do, I give gifts by becoming a Patreon at this particular Patreon address. When you become a patron of mine, you get copies of the books as they arrive. You get copies of the charts that I've created that were used that are now kind of hard to find in the Soul to Spirit blog as I was developing them for 6 years now. But those copies of those charts are all compiled in a PDF that you can easily access if you become a patron. And you get an inner look into what's next. I communicate regularly to my patrons. I value them a great deal. They help keep me going. And even though there's only a few of them, they're the reason why I keep doing this, because sometimes I get just tired and frustrated, but they are my chain 3 motivation, so to speak, to keep going, to keep incubating things and birthing them into a chain 4 globe D kind of womb manifestation, out the womb manifestation, and you can help me make that happen. And hopefully at some point, it's not just me, it's others that I'm hiring to do this work as well. I always like to give credit where credit's due. So this video was created and narrated by me, Dr. Lisa Love. The videos that you see were purchased for use from storyblocks.com. I'm always responsible. I always put out the money to show the to use the videos or use the images that I'm showing in my videos. So the photos were purchased for use from 123rf.com. Other photos of the planets that were used in this video are from the royalty-free Creative Commons accessed through Microsoft PowerPoint. If you like what you see, visit the website at soul2spirit.com. Enjoy this channel, this YouTube channel, then subscribe. Thank you for watching.